Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Courtney Gooden in Hollywood, California is our reader today. Courtney, what do we got on our list?
Well, Bill, first up is from Portsmouth, Maine. I believe Harold Williams asked, if a live sound company hires you as an audio engineer, will you compete with the other engineers at the company? I thought that production was a team effort.
Interesting question. Let's start with Jesse Kester today. What are your thoughts, Jesse?
To say it's a team effort is absolutely true, but to say that there's no competition seems a bit willfully naive, because whether you're working for the art or for the business, every team is trying to create the best possible art or the best possible return on their financial investment. This means that you want the best possible crew, so there is going to be competition. There are only so many seats on every production. So every production wants to fill those seats with the best people available. I think what it comes down to, it really comes down to two factors. The first is the type of management you're engaging with, and some management really pushes competition among the team. If you look at the Michael Bays and the James Camerons of the world, they're really building an environment of kind of, I don't want to say hostility, but there is a very hostile, competitive ecosystem that they're building, and the results do speak for themselves. There are managers who take a much more peaceful and collaborative approach to art. That's the route I go. That's the type of productions I feel more comfortable in, and you can find those productions if that's what you're looking for.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, within a production company, if it's a streaming, let's say a live sound company, and they usually only have one or two lead sound engineers on each job that goes out, yeah, you will be competing with your fellow sound engineers in the pecking order of who's selected to do the primo jobs or the easier jobs, etc. But I like to think of it as, rather than a competition, mutual respect. You find this in the union, like, for example, when a new movie is in the works, all the sound mixers in the union will be vying for it and trying to put their name in. But you have to be respectful of your other sound mixers, because a lot of your work comes from referrals from them. And if you get too competitive, too cutthroat, you don't want to ever undercut in price any of your fellow people that work in the same type of job that you do. So you don't want to undercut your fellow members in the industry, because that will come back to bite you, and you won't get referrals, because a lot of business comes your way when the top guy who gets all the big shows and is always first call on everybody's Rolodex can't do it because he's first call on everybody's Rolodex, and he's usually busy. He or she, I should say. And if he or she is busy, they want to have someone that they trust will not try and steal their clients from them. So a means of mutual respect of the other members of your class of work is necessary in a freelance world out
there. And Alex.
Generally, if someone's on staff, they were freelancing for a while, they proved themselves, and the company hired them, and they are the core of that company. They're usually, if the company's run well, they're generally not feeling any competition. like they're, if anything, they're just overstretched because the company wants to put them everywhere. Brian Maddox worked with me for a long time, and Brian didn't feel like there was any issue with me trying to find a replacement for him. Like, he was the core person. In fact, everyone answered to him. So when we put something in, all the engineers, we would hire maybe 7 or 8 or 10 engineers for a show to manage different rooms or different streams, but they all answered to Brian. In fact, I gave, Brian would have access to their mixer, like, directly. So from where his vantage point is, he could move their sliders if he needed to. So in general, the staff engineers are the ones you want to look to how they want to run it, how they want to do it. Your job is to fit in and extend their ability to do a great show. They're not feeling any competition, and the only way that you get yourself into trouble is for you to treat it like competition or treat it like you have to show off. You don't need to. You just need to fit in and be part of a great team and follow their lead. Don't do anything crazy, but also don't come back and ask for everything. The reason they hired you is because you knew what you were doing. So there's a little bit of that balance that goes on. But fitting into the team, what happens is then you get called all the time. Oh, that person's a great they're just going to fit in wherever we put them, and they're going to be looking for the next thing that could go wrong, but they're not going to create a lot of commotion, and they're not going to be a lot of trouble, and that's usually, and they're not going to talk too much. And those are the things that oftentimes get you hired over and over again.
Next question is coming in. Go ahead.
A little competition from those of us that are.
Well, he was talking about staff. He was talking about staff.
Okay.
Are you competing with staff? And the staff, for the question, the engineers on staff I don't think that they generally feel the competition from the folks that they're freelancing to. They're just making it easier for them.
Next question comes from Scott Harnack. In Tokyo, Japan, amongst the LED display storm, there are finally roll-down versions that appear to enable replacing traditional projection screens for fixed event spaces. Any experience with these? Are they really ready? And he has a link to them.
Yeah, I think we covered something like that at NAB last year. Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, the only thing that's going to be good for replacing is that screen. The roll-up screens do not last. The fold-up screens, the roll-up screens, they're the time. If you want to use them for a year, maybe they'll last for a year at a venue. But we've seen them used in venues, and they have they're all trouble. And maybe someday they're going to figure this out. It looks really cool when you look at it on the website or when you go to NAB or CES and you see these roll down screens. But I've seen them after they've been installed for a year, and they are a disaster. There's pixel problems, there's fold problems, there's all kinds of problems. No, not yet.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, I looked at the video. This looks interesting, but it is a fair. I went. Well, I wonder what the dot pitch is on these, and this seems to be a different design than the other, like the Samsung, the roll-up displays that have been shown for home use. Looks larger, and if you look at the back of this thing, it looks like a bunch of horizontal panels that are linked together to form like Venetian blind type thing as it rolls up. So these single, like 2 or 3 inch, maybe it looks like panels.
The pixels on the seams will break.
But that's what they're using. Supposedly, this is a new type of technology. So we'll see. It doesn't look that big. It doesn't look quite big enough to be. I don't know what the limitation to the size. Oh no, I see the seams are separate. So you say they'll just from bumping into each other they'll go dark?
Yeah, from bumping into they'll go dark. You open and shut this thing pretty often. From bumping into each other, that's a problem with those seams, and they'll either see a seam because they gave them a little space, or you'll see a seam because the pixels start going out. But either way, it all looks good. They look great for the first couple of weeks. It's when you come back a year later, you see these little pixels that are missing.
I wonder if they, then you can replace just the strip since they are linked.
Oh man. Just get a regular one and don't just design around it. It's so not the roll up things. I mean, we've dealt with them for a decade, and we've seen all these different versions of this thing. Like you can make it, you can make it easy. Every time someone says you can make it easy, that something's going to break.
What we need is embedded LED cloth. Somebody will come up with.
They do
canvas.
That. They just don't do it at high pitch rate, but they do. They have cloth that will do that. Again, you start moving those things. What happens is someone scrunches it up and pixels break. And
they treat it like cloth instead.
Right. Yeah. It's
a matrix.
But they, some of the lights that we use, the light mats that we use are LED. But they're just spread out a lot.
Interesting. All right. Next question.
Next question comes from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I just received a Wi-Fi 7 router from my ISP, which will pair nicely with my gigabit speeds. Wired, I can get up to 2.5 gigabits per second. I currently used a deco mesh setup, but I want to upgrade that to match the ISP router. Any thoughts?
Yes, a couple of them from our panelists. Jason Bache is going to start us off. Jason?
So my guess is right now what you actually have is 3 things in one device. You have a gateway, you have a router, and you have a wireless access point. I would say that in order to really get good speed or increased performance overall, you should be splitting those. So your gateway should be its own thing. I like the Ubiquity cable modems. These guys are about $300. If you go that route, pair it with a Ubiquity Dream Machine Pro. And then from there, yes, you can get Wi-Fi 7. I think it's a little bit premature because almost nothing actually supports Wi-Fi 7. But if you want to go that way, I think you really need to separate your gateway from your router and your router from the rest of your wireless.
Alex Lindsay.
I think the only thing I would say, I don't. If you're happy with your ISP's router, then that's fine. I won't put ISP routers in my house. I mean, I don't want Comcast to be giving Wi-Fi from my house to everyone else. It just seems like a bad idea. And I don't generally want I don't generally want Comcast anymore in my house other than just to deliver the bits. So I have the Ubiquity modem as well, and I have the Dream Machine is what I'm using in my house. I don't recommend mesh setups. They're easy but not very effective. You're much better off with a more refined AP system. So wired to AP. I know it's harder, but I would highly recommend. I've had mesh networks in the house. I find them to be unstable, and I've put a lot of them in. Followed all the instructions. They all have 5 little dots on them when I put them in, and it's just not been a great experience for me. So now I have APs that are where they need to be, and I get great speeds.
Don't forget, we're taking your questions always. You can ask questions, chat about questions, and vote on the questions in Mukana. That's our Q&A system that's live during the show every day and has a robust community who talks about the show, talks to each other, and sometimes provides answers into the show. So you can go to officehours.global/join, and we'll send you an email. That's how you kind of get into the back-end system. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Next one comes in from Kigali, Rwanda, with Ryan Yoel asking, I need a bare bones, cheapest 2-person live stream setup with 2 people standing in front of a table to create tutorials, etc. I found 4K webcams with HDMI out, sourced an M4 Mac Mini for appliance, need recommendations for the cheapest mics, audio mixer, video switcher, etc.
Jesse Kester's raised his hand to help you first. Jesse?
We're going into the same building. I just want to use a different door than the one that you laid out. And you're looking for the cheapest A, B, C, D, and E in every category. And what you might find is if you go a little bit more expensive, you can find devices that do A, B, C, and D in one unit instead of spreading that out across a bunch of pieces of kit that might not really tie that well together. So just to put this in like actual terms, if you think about getting a cheap little 4K camera and a cheap little audio recorder and a cheap little audio mixer, you might find yourself spending more than it would cost to buy a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, which has XLR in and does 4K. It does 1080 out. If you're looking for the cheapest streaming solutions, you might want to kick down from 4K to 1080 for your actual streams. So just try to think about it. Like what pieces could you combine into something that's a little more functional and robust, but will save you hundreds, if not thousands, of hours over the next year or two as you have to tie all this stuff together.
Alex Lindsay.
Oops, sorry.
Oops,
yeah, so you may want to try to get a picture set up. You may want to think about just going straight USB into that Mac Mini as well. Here's a shot of what we did for a while for the Michael Krasny show. This is actually, if you wonder what the pit looked like in 3210 in the old ILM stages, this is the pit. And so we were recording there, which, by the way, is a great place to record. It's fully floated, so it's nice and soft. But what you can see here is I was using a Mimo Live here with some lights, and then we use these little links. It took a little while to find cables that will go this far without and still run the links, but this way I could control these links here. This is not the cheapest mixer that you can get. It's just the one that I had laying around. So this is a Scorpio. You can get something much less expensive to do that. In fact, you can mix it. I mean, I would still probably, if you're doing these records, get something that like a Zoom or a Mix Pre that you can record that audio separately before it goes into the computer. I'm a big fan of making sure that happens. Here in Mimo, you can record both the ISOs as well as a switch if you build it, and this allows you to build all your layer sets and control them and so on and so forth. So As far as a pretty compact system, the lights were the biggest thing that it took to run it. Now I'm running off a studio, but that's an M1 studio. I think the M4 the M4 Mac Mini probably be very competitive with that. But I think that, if you're looking for little webcams, as soon as you go down to those little webcam costs, I would really think harder about just using a link for those and staying close enough to the computer that you can do USB straight into it and control them there. Whether you're using Mimo or OBS or any of the other ones, I would go down that path. As far as mics go, if you don't mind seeing the mic in the shot, I would really look at the MV6s are really a good value. The Shure MV6s, they're very close to this form factor. They're about $150, and they sound great. So that's something else to think about as far as putting those together. I'm testing some lower cost Audio Technicas that are $70 to $80. We're looking at being able to send mics and let people just keep them. So stay tuned when we start to test those and see if they're viable for what you're doing as well.
Courtney had a thought?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're going to be doing, if you're doing a podcast, that's one thing where people are stationary. But if you're doing demonstrations, tutorials, et cetera, maybe you want some wireless mics in there because if the people are going to be moving around and using their hands to demonstrate, you don't want a microphone in the way of them. So you could either have an overhead boom microphone or you could use wireless mics. And these DJI Wireless 2, although they are 2.4 gigahertz, you get a pair of them for $349 and a receiver, and they sound pretty good. And you can plug in an external lavalier into it if you don't like the ugly microphone hanging on the front of somebody. You can plug a MK2 or a Sennheiser or any of the lower cost Electret condensers into them, and they sound pretty good. And if you're just within a room, within a few feet of them, make sure that the receiver is on the same side of the body as the transmitter. So if you put the transmitter on their back, put the receiver at the back and wire the audio in from the receiver over a longer USB cable. That might handle your audio microphones. And then as a mixer, you can get analog mixers or you could get the Rodecaster Duo, though that's a little bit more expensive. Sound devices probably out of your range. Samsung makes some nice analog mixers that have USB interface. The FX124, MX124, FX, I think I used on this show for about the first year and a half, and it sounded pretty good. It's not completely, devoid of self noise, but with two wireless mics in an open room, I think you may not hear that if you're streaming. The 4K webcams, you're probably not going to stream in 4K. Maybe you are, but maybe you're going to store it in 4K on YouTube. But live streaming, probably not. So just get a good cameras that have a solid 1080p out and autofocus.
And Alex wanted to come back in on this.
Ryan had mentioned that he wants to be able to fit it all into a case. Now, usually what I do is I would consider it a backpack and a suitcase, but the kit that I'm proposing, other than the lights, everything will fit into a 1510. That's usually my my measurement of what it has to fit into.
Yeah, one of the travelable cases that everybody seems to use. Next question.
Another question coming in from Ryan Kigali in Rwanda. Says, I need a bonded modem for live streaming video calls in Rwanda. Must be the lowest price. Seems Peplink BR2 Micro may do the trick. Any idea on how to check specs to see if it will work in Rwanda?
Alex, do you have some? You've been
the only thing I would
there.
I think that the BR2 is the 5G version of that, which should work in LTE as well, but you're paying a premium for 5G. I just don't know what the penetration of 5G is in Rwanda. I know that I was there when the LTE started, so but the 5G may or may not be as effective. The problem really is that 5G doesn't go very far. So unless you're really in a place that's going to support that at a venue or whatever, I think that would be that's a challenge. So that would be the thing that I would think about. The BR1 is a less expensive version that I believe has most of the other features that the BR2 does, but it's not 5G.
Hopefully that helped, Ryan, and good luck with the project. Pop back and let us know how things go as you build it out. Next question.
Next one comes in from Danny Grizzly in Longview, Texas. He says, I'm scheduled to speak in 2 weeks at a seminar for people planning new home construction. My topic is technology, and time is severely limited. Am I wrong to focus on Ubiquity or Unify?
Jesse Kester is going to help you out here. Jesse?
I'd be really careful about letting your time on stage degenerate into a sales pitch.
There you go. Alex Lindsay, your thoughts?
So when we run into houses, the thing that you always, when someone talks to me and says, you know, or whether they're building apartment complexes or houses, the first thing that I jump into is I just immediately go, okay, first of all, conduit between all the rooms. Like, it's just like if you're building something from scratch, conduit between all the rooms, 3-inch conduit, 2 inches if they push back. But get conduit in there, and while you're there, go ahead and run a TAC-12, or you don't have to do TAC-12 if you got conduit, but run fiber between all of them. Then you can run whatever else you want. You can run some Ethernet, you can run some other copper, you can do whatever you want, but get it in when it's so inexpensive to do when you're building, and not very expensive and very painful after you've built. So you really want to get that connectivity into the thing. So when people talk about technology, that's the first thing I say is just every time I talk to someone who's about to build, I'm just like, get conduit into all of the rooms, every room except the bathrooms. Like, literally just assume that anything could be a studio after that. And so that's my first thing. My second thing is usually pick rooms in a house. If you've got a 4-bedroom house, make one of the bedrooms, not the master bedroom, but one of the bedrooms be really insulated, and give it, like the next generation of people looking for houses are going to be looking for a place where they can work from home, where they can be available to those things. That has a certain value to some. It won't have a value to everyone, so don't make it look like a studio. But it's much easier to get. You don't have to float the room, but it's much easier to make it much more in one room, much more insulated, without windows, without all the other stuff, so that someone can use it as a bedroom. But someone could also, you can put a window in there and just make it easy to cover. But you could turn it into a studio relatively easily. Those are the two things that I wish people would know more about when they're building apartments and houses.
Couldn't support that more. When I was building out my studio from the hay barn, I put conduit inside everywhere, and I can't tell you the number of times I was back up there pulling an extra wire or power cable or something to get it to a place without running cables across the floor and things like that. It turned out to be the best thing I ever did. So if you can talk them into doing that, boy, the people down the road will be really appreciative. I know I was. Hey, don't forget, we have other shows. Extra Hours comes on Mondays, and it is Monday night, so Grant and the rest of his guests will be doing the show tonight. For those of you who are interested, hop into officehours.global and look for Extra Hours. Tuesday, we often have special shows. On Wednesday, Conversations with Tony Mobley. On Thursday, The Rundown. David Paskin hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech. So those are all things that are happening here on kind of the Office Hours global world, and we encourage you to check them out. Next question.
Another one coming in from Kigali, Rwanda. Ryan UL says, any recommendations on where to buy a secondhand iPhone from a reputable online seller at a good price? Needs LIDAR for Polycam and will be brought to Rwanda via USA flight. Ideally low price, reputable, etc., as there's no way to fix or return once in Rwanda.
And Jason Bache may have some advice for you here. Jason?
My first thought is Gazelle, but if you really need it to not fail, perhaps get one of the refurbished ones and have it shipped to wherever you're going to be in the U.S., and then maybe actually get an Apple refurbished one.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the oldest one that you can get with LIDAR is the 12. So I think the 12 was the first one with, and those you can just buy from Amazon. Amazon sells them. They sell at a reasonable price. I think Apple. David Brady pointed out that apple.com/shop/refurbished/iPhone is another option there. I haven't looked at the Apple ones. If Apple sells them, I would just probably buy them from Apple. But look at Amazon as well. Make sure that it's a Pro. The Pros are the only ones that had the LIDAR on them, but you should be able to find them for $300 or so. with the LIDAR that you need.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Phoenix, Arizona. Jack Cannon asked, I have a control booth in the back of the room. I need mics on stage for live stream. Do I run a snake or use wireless mics? The room is about 40 by 40 feet and have anywhere from 20 to 75 people in the room.
Alex, what's your suggestion?
I only use wireless when I have to. So if I can, I never, ever for cameras or audio or anything else will use wireless out of convenience. I use it because that's necessary. The person's walking around on stage. The cameras have to roam around. It's typically roaming. If what you're talking about is people sitting on a stage talking to other people, I might give them wireless mics if it feels like there's going to be a lot of cables where they're standing. If they're all sitting at a table, I'm going to wire those mics up if I can. It's just there are so many things that can go wrong with wireless that you always want to lean into wired as far as you can. So if you are going to do wired, then I'm going to want to run. I want to get I want to get my receivers as close to the stage as I can. So to go back to what you're talking about, stage box or a snake, those are the kind of things. Oftentimes, we want to put up. We try to do a lot of Dante, so we'll have a Dante stage box up front, and then run that back to us over Ethernet. And if in a perfect world you run it two different directions. Most of your stage boxes have two Ethernets, and so you run it both sides of the room. But the Ethernet's not that expensive, and then then you're off to the races.
Yeah, just one more note into all this good advice. If you don't have power running parallel to them, XLR cables can be really long, and you can pack a bunch of them together and run 4 or 5 in one kind of put-together snake, and there's no crosstalk or anything like that if the cables are in good shape and the grounds are all good.
I think the last time I ran more than 50 feet of XLR, probably 2016. You're right, but we've still had issues, and once you start using Dante,
crosstalk out of XLR cables.
Well, it was running over a lot of power. It's not little power.
Power.
So we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't figure out where the buzz was coming from. We get there. I might not even have a picture of it. I took a picture of it. It's like hundreds of amps of power that they that somebody ran it over. We were like, what are you guys doing? I don't even run. I run the audio on the other side of the room when it's like Edison's, and these guys are running like audio snakes over like.
I caught a guy gaffers taping audio lines and power cables together in a bundle. I just wanted to stop it. Yeah. Anyway, words to the wise. Next question.
Next one comes in from Roz Humphreys in Comox, British Columbia. I'm on my iPhone or iPad. What is the best way to analyze Wi-Fi quality?
Jason Bache, help us out.
Okay, I am not going to take the bait and give you a $12,000 way to analyze Wi-Fi. I'm going to give you the practical, easy way to do this. WiFiMan.com. I hate to sound like a fanboy, but Ubiquity does this really well. WiFiMan.com you can run from any web browser. It's also an iOS app, and if you get this $99 secondary transceiver, it kind of gets onto the back of your iPhone and communicates via Bluetooth and is its own transceiver, which allows it to both look at the spectrum and do the throughput, which is just a very clever, inexpensive way to do this.
Alex?
Yeah, and for RF frequencies in general, Mickey suggested RF Explorer. I have one, but it's just a little too far out of reach for me to grab it. But RF Explorer is a great way to look at the actual RF that's happening in your space, which can be sometimes more useful than knowing just how the Wi-Fi is working.
By the way, the simplest and quickest ways to get a show question in, and it can happen very fast, is to use askofficehours.global. Just type that into your web browser, or if you prefer, I will pop up the QR code in the bottom of the screen here. You can shoot that with your phone or whatever. If you do that, that's askofficehours.global. You can get into the system very quickly, and sometimes your question asked now can get into the show before the end of the show. So just a word to the wise. Next question.
Next one comes in from Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. Says, we just bought a new house and I will be moving soon. I have to build a whole new office, and I plan to build out a custom workspace with lighting, sound treatment, and networking, etc. What would be that I wish I could do this in your office?
And Jesse Kester is going to help you out.
Oh, we've got like a personal animosity to every camera we bought that was less than Super 35. So if you're doing a webcam, get something with a Super 35 or a larger sensor and give it a 50mm 1.8 lens, and you'll be looking very, very good. And if you don't do that, you'll be wishing you had. Our apartment was built in the 70s before they put Ethernet in the walls, and we really wish. I guess it's a little too late for you on that one, but that's the number one thing that we wish we had in our office was just the ability to run Ethernet through the walls, as Alex was mentioning earlier.
Alex, your thoughts?
Being able to run whatever cables before you move in, it's a lot easier to do when it's empty than when it's full. So figure that out. Figure out whether you're going to have, if you have a closet, you may want to turn that into a little server room. So find a room with a closet and put your servers and stuff. Just remember that you have to figure out ventilation for it. So you might have to get its own AC feed or its own AC unit. To keep it cool. But the main thing is that when you think about that, when you get a lot of gear in your office, you're going to need an isolated box, or you're going to need to be in another room, or you're going to get a lot of fan noise. And so those are things to think about when you're building out your office there. The first thing I tell everyone when they say, I want to do something where I'm going to have lighting and sound and everything else, the very first thing I'm like, hey, get a grid. Get a grid early. Grids are really hard to add later. Ask me how I know. So it's much easier to get a grid. In a perfect world, you get a grid with it depends on how high your ceilings are. I have really high ceilings in this room, so you can get a grid at 10 feet, but it just depends. But you just need a little underneath whatever your current ceiling is. You don't have to attach it to the ceiling. You can run it up the corners, speed rail up the corners, and then have it completely freestanding. But you just simply push it against the walls with some of the devices. They're actually the feet. You push the feet against it with a cross connect and tighten it, and it'll push right against the walls. It'll be very, very stable. So that's one thing to think about. Obviously, for me, I always want the room to be quiet. So figuring out how you're going to make it. You're going to manage reflection, but also manage any kind of outside noise. So I tend to fill in windows really quickly to get rid of the noise that they generate. So those are the kind of things that I think about. But take a room and decide this is the room that's going to be your office, and then build it out. If you ever think you're going to see the floor, or you want it to look tidy, there are one thing that we've done with other people's studios. I haven't done it with my studio yet. I keep thinking about it. Is you can get raised floors that are about 1.5 inches high, made out of typically some kind of plastic and or rubberized plastic, and it is they'll raise up and you can run cables through them. Man, does it turn a studio into a nice clean place really fast. You buy them in interconnected chunks. They raise the whole floor up, and then all your cables go under that as well. So these are the kind of things that I would, when I tear this apart and put it all back together, the kind of things I'll probably add to the system.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, and if you're going to use a space that normally wouldn't be utilized as your, office or studio space, like a basement, which has no windows, one thing would be on my wish list, especially since I was in Costco yesterday, and the price of I was in Walmart, 98-inch displays are under $1,200, which you can get for TCLs. And building these, a lot of people have built these faux windows into the back of their studios with 3 large, like 98-inch monitors side by side by side. And for that price, you can put, and then you just hook a single PC up to it, which you can span the 3 monitors with a 4K image. And it looks pretty darn good, super high pitch because they're 4K monitors to begin with, turned vertically. And you build a little mullion in here that goes in front, and you find the TVs that have a pretty thin bezel around the outside. Put some curtains up on either side. Of course, there's no window there, and then you can put any image you want to behind you or out the window, and you can adjust its brightness, time of day, etc., so that you can have a great background depending upon what the show is, or you can use it as informational displays, put different information like weather or things you're discussing, or use it like a whiteboard for displaying information if you're doing instructional videos behind you. So it's a very versatile like a video wall, only about 20 to 30 times cheaper.
Jesse Kester.
And if you really want to get into lighting, please remember that lighting doesn't begin with lights. Lighting begins with darkness, so be sure to black out that room before you start bringing in all your lighting apparatus.
One of the best lighting books I ever read was actually called Placing Shadows. Smart idea. Next question.
Sorry, that's me. Isn't it? Fonsek Dorji asks, hey, panelists, 20 laptops are going to join a Zoom class in a computer. Please advise on a Wi-Fi router that can handle 20 Zoom traffics easily.
Alex Lindsay, can you help him out?
The easiest and least expensive way to do it, maybe not the easiest, but the least expensive way to do this is actually Ethernet. So running Ethernet to the computers is going to make a big difference in the connectivity that you have there. You just make sure you have a 1 gig switch because you're going to run a little over that most likely. Now, the other thing I think you said, this question came up, I think, over the weekend. You probably missed it because we don't put those records up, is that you had a 100 meg connection. So make sure that you're not setting it 1080p. You want to make it 720 because otherwise you're going to go over the 100 megs that you have. 720 should be safely underneath that with the 20 that you have. So so I would look at that there. But I wouldn't recommend, if I was going to do a router, for me, I would probably end up with a Ubiquity router because then I can see everything that's connected. I can see what each device is using. I have a lot of visibility. If I have a Ubiquity Dream Machine or whatever with a U7 or something like that, you're going to be able to see a lot about what's actually happening. But I would lean towards wired, a very inexpensive Netgear, 20 or 32, port, whatever, will fix all of this and be much more effective than Wi-Fi.
Next question.
From Braz Humphreys in Comox, British Columbia. Will Mukana run on my iPad?
Alex?
Runs just fine. In fact, there's a variety of different views of it, but it should run on your iPad just fine.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. What system would you build to monitor multiple breakout rooms that each need a recording from a single static camera? All meeting rooms can be accessed via Ethernet. Remote stop and start and visual recording indicators would be great.
Alex, can you help?
Yeah, so a couple things. One question is when you said it's available via Ethernet, does that mean that you're home running back to where you are with Ethernet, or are you going through a switch or a router? That changes a lot of things about whether you're using NDI, 2110. All these other things are things that you want to, those are things you want to kind of think about there. So is that Ethernet part of a larger network, or is it a home run back to you? If it's a home run back to you, then I think there's NDI and 2110 options. Blackmagic's got a bunch of 2110 options. Obviously, there's a lot of NDI options that you can do to bring it back. I would try to, typically what I would try to do is record on camera as well as have a recorder. Now, I have to admit, for the stuff that I record that matters, I'm almost always recording on HyperDex. So I'm a hardware recording person. That's what I record on because I want to make sure that it's there. Roscoe said that in the chat, he said it's hotel internet. So those aren't really available. like there's nothing, if you have hotel internet, you are not, now if you're going to do breakout rooms, you could theoretically use Zoom ISO. If they're going to be on Zoom, if these are breakout rooms and they're going to Zoom, then you can theoretically send these out to Zoom ISO and then record them, remotely with a variety of other things. But if you're talking about hotel internet, it's going to be, I'm kind of surprised that you have, I guess these are conference rooms, so you probably have Ethernet in each one of these. But I wouldn't trust anything with hotel internet with anything that I expect to get from one place to the other with that effectively, using any kind of major solutions. What you're probably going to end up wanting to do is do some kind of SRT. So SRT is going to get you from one place to if they're both internet, even if they're on the home network. You wouldn't want to run NDI on the hotel network, in my opinion. You can't run 2110 on the hotel network. So what you're really looking at is an SRT backhaul, and that SRT backhaul could go to vMix. If you're on PCs, it could go to MIMO. It could go to a variety of different things that are capable of recording ISOs. I would still, especially going down this path, try to record on the cameras as well as something remotely.
Next question.
Another one comes in from Comox, British Columbia. Roz Humphreys asked, I'm getting Cat8 installed. Temporarily, I'll use Cat6 from my floor to my Macs. Is there any possible problems with this?
And Jason Bache is going to help you out. Jason?
No, not really. I'm sure you'll be fine. Cat6, according to its spec, can do 100 meters at gigabit speed without any incident. So unless you're going to exceed that and you have over a gigabit speed on your Mac, you'll be fine.
Next question.
Comes in from Phoenix, Arizona, Jack Cannon. This question is recommendations for Ethernet-based snakes in response to my previous question. We don't have Dante in the space yet, and we need 4 channels. So, of course, recommendations should be for 8 channels.
I didn't know snakes could use the internet. Alex, I'm being silly. Alex?
Well, number one is if you need 4 channels right now, you should definitely be looking at 12 to 16 channels somewhere in the future, because you'll just keep having channels is like having a bag. You'll just keep filling it. I can do all this stuff, because it'll oftentimes you have channels coming back, but eventually you're going to want channels going down to the space as well. So those will be for IFBs. They'll be for a variety of other things, because you have them. And once you have them, you're going to start using them. The one question I have for you, Jack, is what kind of mixer are you using to do this? So if you are, typically, we use a lot of different things for those boxes that are there. The ones that I like the best are the Rios. The Yamaha Rios are the ones and there's a couple different sizes of those to grab onto stuff. There's smaller ones that are made by like for 4 channels. You can get things from, I believe, Studio Technologies. There's one that Sound Devices used to make, but I think it was based on Studio Technologies there. Mickey recommends the Radial Engineering Catapult system. So that's another one. The other thing to know is that if you've already got some kind of Behringer, you can use things like the Ultranet. That's a cost-effective way to do it, and we've used them in the past. Preamps aren't as good as the ones that we're talking about here, but those are another option as well.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I haven't used these. I was going to ask Alex if he has used with the Behringer. Is that they make a digital stage box?
Those are the Ultranets. Those are the S8 and the S16.
S16, S32. That's what I was going to ask you about. Okay.
Yeah, and they work. We've definitely used them in the past, but it depends on on how much you want to spend day one on those. Once you have Ethernet going to the stage, you can always swap things out. So you could get an S18, S16 or whatever for now, and then switch over to Dante at somewhere in the future and get something bigger if you wanted to. I will say that I'm very addicted to Dante. like I am. I just have to say that, like, if you're building this thing from the ground up, really think about how you're going to build something that's going to support Dante in this environment, because once you suddenly have a stage box there and you can route that anywhere, it's not just going back and forth to the mixer. It's on a network. I would give that Dante network its own copper, its own switches, its own, like, if you're building something from scratch, put that Dante network in its own space, and then attach the things that need to be done there. It's just such a great experience when you're in a space to be able to do that. And even if you like Mickey's pointing out, I'm just kind of glancing at this, the sound and PA systems. Even for the PA systems, we just run Ethernet to them, and we use the little Audinate connectors to put into it. So we do self-powered speakers with Ethernet. It's Ethernet everywhere. It just makes life so much easier.
And there's a lot of chat in the chat today. And James Haldane said, Redco makes great twisted pair snakes too. Also Rat Sound. And we got some support there in the chat for those brands. Next question.
Next question comes in from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. Will you recommend a budget-friendly HDMI and USB cable tester? I like to check cables prior to use. I suspect some brands do not always connect all the pins. Thoughts?
Alex?
Yeah, I don't know about an HDMI tester. I probably could use one, but HDMI. I usually am buying from pretty solid solutions for HDMI. I did find someone recommended the coolest HDMI cables. I'll let Courtney answer, and then I'll come back. I got to show you these HDMI cables.
Courtney, dive in.
Well,
Whoops.
usually I just test with the devices that are going to be using those cables because it makes a difference on how long the cables are. And finding a budget, there's no such thing as a budget HDMI tester that actually tests the quality of the transmission over lengths of the cable. I mean, you can have them that just say, are the connectors all solid? Yes. But what frequency will they handle? Will they handle 4K at 300 feet? Will they handle only 1080p? Will they handle 720p? There's a lot of it depends on each of those cable questions. And the same thing is true of USB. If you're doing USB extension cables, the bandwidth that they can carry is dependent on the quality of the cable and whether there's a little amplifier at the end, whether they're amplified cables or not. And there's also HDMI cables that have red mirror technology and that have little circuits in each of the connectors that either amplify or equalize the impedance between the different conductors. And they're unidirectional. They only go one way. So any type of cable tester may not be able to take that into account just for checking continuity of the cable. So what I do a lot of times is I'll take a mini just to save time and space so I don't have to carry a computer around with me to test them, is I'll use one of the MDHX's cross converter, MD cross, which has the signal generator built into it. So it can generate HD signals in HDMI or SDI. And I just had set that up to one of its test signals, HDMI test signals, which have, they have 20 different test patterns you can send over them. Send it over the cable and plug a monitor in the other side and see if it looks good without the sparkles and things. And then, it's working for your particular application. So that's what I use to test with, or I use a little media player that you can get for about $50. I put my own test patterns on it for 1080p testing, and I just plug one of those in at one end and plug the monitor in at the other. And if the signal looks good and clean, then it passes the test.
There you go, Alex. You wanted to come back after your research?
I can't find it. I gotta look a little bit more. I think that they're the install bay fiber cables, and they are the ends detach, and that may seem like a minor thing, but these are fiber cable, the fiber HDMI, where the ends will detach, so that when you're running the cable, one of the biggest problems with HDMI is getting the HDMI through little holes, and so that pops out so that you're able to route it and then pop the HDMI back on. They're not cheap. They go up to about 300 feet, but the 300-foot one is like $1,000. So it's they're not cheap, but they were cool.
Absolutely. Don't forget, if you like and value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. First and foremost, and it always makes a difference, is you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. I mean, everybody knows how much that affects whether people can find you and locate you. So if you do that, we would appreciate it. If you want to take the next step up, volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that does this every day. You will meet a lot of great people, and you will learn a ton interacting with all the people who make Office Hours kind of their second home. And the final way, the easiest way, if you choose to, is to donate. You can simply make a donate. We're a 501c3. officehours.global/donate will hook you up with that. Next question.
Next question comes in from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington District of Columbia. He says, what tech projects or hobbies are you currently playing with?
Oh, we've got some hand raised here. Jesse Kester, what are you doing?
We've been having way too much fun with AI editing in DaVinci Resolve. So we had an extra room in our office. We put in 3 cameras, 2 SM7Bs, and built out a little, podcast interview studio. And we've got it set up so you push the 1-button record on the ATEM. It triggers all the cameras in 4K RAW. We bring those RAWs into Resolve, tell it to auto-edit the hour-long conversation. It's 3 to 5 minutes of work for an hour-long video podcast, and it's just the most fun we've been having in our studio in a long time. I've been interviewing my 4-year-old son once a day for about 5 minutes and pushing those out to his grandparents, and it's been a delight.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, so my son and I we started shooting stuff for his high school. My daughter's on stage. My son and I are shooting the video footage of their plays and so on and so forth. And so figuring out lots of little bits and pieces. My son's doing all the lifting, and I'm just simply working with him on it, which is really fun. And so we're having a good time working together on that. And he's learning Resolve really quickly and putting those. A lot of it's also there's no budget, so we're dealing with very limited. Where do we put all the data, and what hard drives can we put it on, and can we edit at a lower resolution, and all these things that I don't normally deal with, we are dealing with, and so it's fun to work on. The other thing is that it's starting to build up that I feel like a very, very absurd bird feeder is coming. I can just see, I can't stop thinking about it.
Multicam 4K bird feeder, I can see it.
Not multicam. It's going to be single camera, but I have my head set on a 4K 60 HDR 5.1 to put it out there so you can hear all the birds all around you. But not like a super wide angle. So the problem is everyone's been talking about these bird feeders but I was like, the bird feeders are fine, but the angle's too wide and the thing's too small and the resolution isn't high enough. And what would it be like to have to put up on your home screen a 4K 60 of it with a 50 millimeter, so everything looks like thing with a nice background. And if you have 5.1, it fills up the 5.1 and it looks great. So I have an old 4K camera, old Blackmagic Ursa that I think I can put into a big box, and it's going to be totally absurd, and I'm going to have to make a video about it, I think. But if I do it, but I'm starting to build it in my head, which usually means that 2 or 3 months later, it's sitting somewhere. So we'll see.
My old friend Bill Farnsworth in Seattle has been running a bird cam in his birdhouse for the last 10 years and has a loyal following for every mating season and every.
I think the funny thing is,
season.
I was going to do 5.1, and I felt like. And I think you could do a little ASMR if you put like a little shotgun mic or a little mic pointed right at the feed. So you see him like sitting there like doing the thing and looking around. I think that there's a lot we could, I want to build it so that we can keep on customizing it. But I think if you left that up all the time, a lot of people would watch it. The only problem that I have is that I'll probably put it in front of my deck. And I take phone calls sometimes out on my deck, and I'd be like, people will be listening in the back channel.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Security.
Can't believe they're doing that, blah, blah, blah. So I'd have to be very careful of what's going on in the mics.
Courtney, your thoughts?
Yes, escape. Yes. The bird cam recording tapes. Yes, I can see it now. What I'm doing is I'm addicted to buying small computers. Stop me before I buy again. I've been testing these are the new GMK Tech mini PCs. You see, my favorite one is the N97 here, which is got 2 4K. Where are they?
Is that the same box that they just put?
That's the old one. This is the new one. This is the N150, which I've been testing. It does run Resolve 20 on it. This has nice because it has 2 gigabit Ethernet ports on it, so you can set it up as a router, and it has 3 display outputs on it. One's a display port and 2 are HDMI 2.1. And then it has 3 3.0 type A USB connectors. The thing I don't like about the new one, the N150s, is that it has it's like an octopus. When you put it on your desk, the USB comes out of this side, and the Ethernet comes out of this side of the display port. So you just have this mass of cables. The old design was a much better layout with, most of the connectors that you need to connect it up: power, display, 2 displays, Ethernet, and 1 USB, which could go to a hub or on one side. Then there's just a micro SD card. And the bigger one doesn't have a micro SD card slot in it. So 2 demerits for that. So I like the old ones better. And the other thing is I found an old bin in cleaning out my storage of these stick PCs, which I used to have about 5, I probably have about 10 of them in there. And I was putting my video playback toolkit on, which are very compact. And I thought, maybe I should pull those out. I was going to sell them at one time, but maybe I'll just pull them out, upgrade them to Windows 10, which is, I think, the latest operating system that these things can run because they're 32-bit, and put my playback software on them and sell them online here to people. I just don't want to deal with the tech support for them at a loss. Better than them sitting in a bin rotting, until they're completely obsolete. So that's going to be another project for me, updating these, checking them out, putting my software on them, and getting rid of them, get them out of the storage.
So much fun. My current is the multicast, multi-voice audiobook that I'm working on right now. And I know audiobooks are under a lot of pressure, and a lot of this AI stuff will be taking away all of that stuff. But it's so much fun to do a variety of characters and cast the parts, and working with people all over the country via the internet, and just the combination of doing the base work and then replacing parts, and I'm using Final Cut as a process through roles to be able to isolate each individual performance of each character and all my performances of them as I would do in a traditional audiobook, but then be able to extract that performance and put in a secondary person and track that easily. Plus, I'm using Audio Design Desk, which is a spotting of audio effects program to be able to put in all the audio effects. That's just turning into be fun, because I can literally, if I have something where somebody's walking across a room, I can just pop in the footsteps as they go. So it's just a lot of stuff, and that'll probably never go anywhere in terms of being able to compete against the giant Amazon stuff like that. But it's just really satisfying to be able to do creative work with the new tools we have and trying to leverage what modern stuff can do to tell a story in a different way. So that's been my fun recently. That's it for today. Those are all the questions we had in. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of Office Hours. We truly appreciate it. As always, the constituencies that make this show possible, without our question askers, this does not happen. Our producers, who really drive this show in every sense of the word by asking the questions. Thank you. We truly appreciate your input here every day. To the panelists who show up to answer those questions and really give us the benefit of expertise gained over the working decades that most of our panelists have. We couldn't answer the questions without them. And to our amazing back-end crew, the people who push the buttons, and much more than that. They do that during the live show, but there's also all the research and all the meetings and everything as we try to build out this network and provide as much utility as we can to all of you who are hoping to come here and get your questions answered and learn something about this new world of digital production as it evolves. So thank you to all of you. Our clock traversal today, 56,000 miles is how far you would have had to travel around the globe to get the expertise that you were provided today. That's 90,000 kilometers, 443 million bananas for scale. Tonight, don't forget, extra hours, so stay tuned. Bye.
Just in case.
Angenu lens for my bird cam. I've decided Angenu.
Oh, yeah?
Make those bird feeders with cameras built in commercially.
I think no, I don't. Yeah, but they're not enough. Like I know that they make them, and I'm looking.
They record.
I know, but I don't. It even has AI where it sends you a text that says there's a
type of bird it is. Yeah,
yeah. There, but I think that there's a place where if you build something that looks gorgeous, like off the screen, that people would just put that on they just stream.
I still think you need a ZRNES system with 3-camera live switch and let people control it and punch the birds from far away.
Multi-cameras that shoots the bird from, so you see the splendor of the birdhouse.
Here's my whole thing: is if I build it on an Ursa canvas, if I build on the Ursa, if I get a hold of the new spherical camera, I can very quickly just swap it in and have you be able to put your Apple Vision Pro on and just be sitting there. Giant birds land.
There's a bird feeder mat box. It just clips on the front of the